It's social distancing at the chamber, also known as Happy Hour with Hammer. As always, joined by the CEO of the Arizona Chamber, Glenn Hammer. My name is Garrick Taylor. We're going to turn our attention tonight to the topic of DACA. This month, we anticipate a Supreme Court ruling on the status of that program. Joining us tonight, Reyna Montoya. She was born in Tijuana. She calls herself DACA-mented. She emigrated to this country in 2003. Fellow DACA recipient, Luis Acosta, public affairs professional here in town. To both of you, thanks for being on the show.
Thank you for having us.
All right, before we get into the hardball questions, Glenn, say some nice things about these two guests.
Well, that could take up the entire show. I want to first thank Reyna for being on the show. Whenever I see her, I'm like, geez, when am I going to do something? It's true, and she probably has won another award since we started airing this. Forbes 30 Under 30. She's been recognized with the Athena Award by the Greater Phoenix Chamber of Commerce. The organization that she has started has created a movement in this state and across the country, and it's one that we're proud to do whatever we can to help. And then it has to do with DACA, and I'll even say really DACA plus, because we know that there's a lot more that we need to do. And I'll just say Luis is a genius. He's a policy, this guy knows education policy and knows a lot of other areas, also knows his way around politics. And we were lucky to have him at the Chamber Foundation and at the Chamber. And I appreciate all that you've contributed to improving education in this state. And thank you both for being on the show.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Glenn.
All right, Reyna, we're going to start with you first. We expect a ruling this month. Just for our viewers, tell us what the Supreme Court's going to tell us sometime in June.
So we don't know exactly what they're going to be deciding. There's multiple scenarios that they can go around. So DACA as the program right now, the main case, it's around whether President Trump ended the program and he followed protocol. So if he did everything administratively that he needed to do before winding out the program. So that's the main legal argument. The way that it can go, it can be 3 to 4 predominantly scenarios. One scenario could be that the Supreme Court, worst case scenario for DACA recipients is that the Supreme Court decides that the program was not constitutional in the first place, meaning that this can create a precedent for other programs in the future, not only DACA. The second scenario can be that they decide that President Trump had the power to end the program. He didn't need to follow protocol. And then they're going to do a phase out of the program, meaning that, for example, me as a DACA recipient, my DACA expires 2 days before Valentine's Day on 2022. So then that means that that day I would become undocumented and then I would be subject to deportation. The other scenario can be that they don't make a decision and they decide to throw it back to different lower courts. That can be also a potential scenario. Those are the 3 main common ones. There's one of the deepest fears that I've been talking to DACA recipients is they can also take immediate action, not only deciding that it's unconstitutional, but terminating the DACA cards on the spot, meaning that effective of X day, then everybody who has a DACA card is no longer valid.
Got it. And just to be clear, and I'm going to get Luis in on this. Luis, if Reyna was talking about it could get punted back down to a lower court, but, and maybe Reyna, this is for you too, but that's a temporary victory because we're still in the midst of ongoing litigation, right?
Luis, I don't know if you want to take it.
Please, I mean, you have a better handle on the politics guy. So.
I mean, I am not an attorney, but I've been doing this work for many years now, and after speaking with many attorneys, you just explained it very well. It can be like kicking the kick down the road, but that doesn't mean that we still don't have those challenges. So I don't perceive that they would actually do that. I could be wrong. This is just pure speculation based on analysis that I have read, and I have followed the issue very closely. But I mean, they have received a lot of pressure, so I don't foresee them taking such a decision.
Glenn?
Luis, if you feel comfortable, your personal experience is really is very, very powerful, and since a presidential candidate actually put it in a commercial of sorts, I do feel comfortable now bringing it up. But I'd appreciate it if you could talk about it, because I think it's really important to hear. And I think of myself, I like to joke that I came from another country called New York. I came here. I wasn't a kid. I was 21-ish, 22-ish to go to law school at ASU. You have more Arizona in your blood than I ever will. And no, it's true. I'm just a guy who probably, guy from New York, usually wind up in Florida. I have a bad sense of direction, so I'm in Arizona. But can you talk? Do you feel comfortable talking a little bit about your experience? Because it's really powerful.
No, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I had the opportunity to share my experience or my story for the first time on the Mike Bloomberg for President campaign, and it was, I'll tell you what, it was one of the scariest yet most freeing experiences of my life, just in the sense that I don't think many people outside of my inner circle knew about my situation. I mean, obviously, you both knew and whatnot, but there was like a handful of like maybe 5 people in the entire political industry in the state of Arizona that actually knew up to that point. And so taking that step was a big decision for me. But essentially, my family came to the United States when I was 2 years old. My earliest memories of my grandpa holding up the chain link fence in Nogales, and my mom, myself, and my grandma going under, and then going to a McDonald's where my uncle picked us up and drove us to Phoenix. I grew up on 18th Avenue in Van Buren, right across the street, actually in the shadow of the Governor's Tower. And every day when I would walk to Capitol School, I would always look across the street on 17th Avenue in Van Buren, southward. And I would always see the elected officials, the lobbyists walking to the state capitol in their suits. Back in the day, there weren't those bigger towers, and so you could actually see across. Right? And so coming from an immigrant family, construction family, you don't associate yourself with those people and that level of person in a suit, for lack of a better term. But growing up during the SB 1070 days, growing up during the Sheriff Arpaio raids, I mean, I'm sure Reyna can talk about her experience as well. But you just grow up and you learn to hide. You learn to hide. You learn not to talk about who you are. You learn to, the second you walk into a room, the first thing that I still do to this day is I look for an exit. And that's the exit that I look for. And just in case anything bad goes happen, I know that's my exit. And so this entire experience throughout, my political journey and whatnot has always been one where I've always been trying to work internally with, organizations and helping them understand the situations and helping them draft and create pragmatic policy that's really going to push everybody forward in a positive direction. And so now we're at that crossroad, right, where this program that's given so many opportunities, I think in the state of Arizona, and Reyna, correct me if I'm wrong, it's roughly over 30,000 with a GDP contribution of roughly 1.3 billion to the state of Arizona. It's in jeopardy, and there are people like me, people like Reyna, people like countless other people just in the state who are stand-up citizens and haven't done anything bad in their entire lives, and now they could potentially be left in limbo or be deported.
Well, on the economic impact, first of all, this is the right thing to do morally. So I start there. But you look at the way DACA has been set up. These are people who going to a university, they're working, or they've been in the military. I mean, and you think about that for a second. They're all contributing to a better Arizona and to a better America. So, on the, we have many, many members. Probably most of our larger members have someone who, multiple employees who are DACA recipients, and they're contributing to those companies and to those communities. So, from every angle, from a chamber perspective, this is incredibly important. I'm sorry, Reyna, you may have wanted to jump in. So
No, you're fine. I think that's something to add on to what you're saying. If we really lean into understanding, specifically in these moments of global pandemic, right? There's 30,000 DACA recipients that are in the front lines. One of my board members at Arizona at Aliento, you know, like we're a nonprofit organization, and one of my board of directors is a DACA recipient. She got her master's in social work, and she's in the front lines right now working at a hospital. So if you think about how interconnected we are as a community, we're not only going to be impacting the close to 700,000 DACA recipients across the nation, but we're going to be impacting communities from now. DACA recipients, you know, our teachers, our nurses, our social workers, and you're going to have an impact one way or another if you know someone, or maybe you don't know their status, like Luis was mentioning, you know, like how many people interacted with Luis and have seen his brilliance, and yet they didn't know he was a DACA recipient.
Reyna, okay, so you've heard Luis's story, but let's remember that DACA is Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals, right? We have to stress the childhood portion. So Luis's story, I'm guessing for people like you and an advocate on behalf of DACA recipients, Luis's story is pretty common.
Yeah, unfortunately it is. Luis and I are not the only ones, you know. The average age of a DACA recipient that migrated to the United States, it's the age of 6. Many of them came younger, many of them came later on, but it's not uncommon. If we're talking about the DACA universe, like how many people potentially would have qualified for the DACA program, we're talking about close to 1 million people, depending on the statistics. And if we talk about the DREAM Act, which is a federal legislation that is not temporary as deferred action, I think that they were very strategic, saying it's a deferred action, meaning that it can be temporary, it's not permanent, and it can be taken at any time. So with that said, we're talking about close to even 2.1 million individuals that came here as children, that came fleeing violence. Like in my case, you know, we were fleeing after my dad had been kidnapped. So there's not only the social economical factors, but there's also the political factors in some of the countries that we migrated from that were very severe. The fact that the people who kidnapped my dad was a police officer, you know, and everything that is happening in our nation, it has been extremely re-traumatizing for me, thinking about, look, I made it to the US and we've been safe, and now seeing that what is happening with some of our African American brothers and sisters, and seeing the deep pain that creates and the victimization of so many people like me.
Could Reyna or Luis, can you talk a little bit on the education front? I mean, we at the Chamber, strong supporters of in-state tuition for all community colleges, universities. We have some issues with the way we have ballot protection in this state that have made that more challenging. Will you talk a little bit about that issue and the impact since the court case, particularly in the community colleges, which I believe have seen declining enrollments because of the tripling or quadrupling of fees and tuition?
Yeah, in 2006, I believe, and Rena, correct me if the year's wrong, but the state of Arizona passed Prop 300, which basically forced the education, the higher education system of the state of Arizona to charge folks who couldn't provide a social security number out-of-state tuition. And so this impacted this DACA population in a critical way. I mean, I suffered from it. I'm sure Reyna suffered from it, but you know, I can only talk about myself at this point. I got to ASU after I graduated from Brophy, and the scholarship that I thought that I had to go to ASU, I could not count on because I did not have a social security number. And so then I had to leave ASU within a week and sign up at Phoenix College. And I could only afford, I think, one class at $300, $400 or something like that. And I don't know, the credits were expensive back then. And so I literally had to, you know, figure something out, right? There are many kids that were not as fortunate as I was, or figured out some way. But you know, when you think about the entire investment that the state of Arizona has made into this DACA population from pre-K to high school, I mean, it's substantial. It's public tax dollars that have gone to educating these kids, and then you're putting a boundary, an entrance boundary, in their face when they're trying to get their higher education, and you're not capitalizing on the potential investment and reaping the return on investment. And so some of the things that, you know, when I was at the Chamber that we tried doing in conjunction with Reyna was passing some sort of in-state tuition component for DACA recipients or for that qualification. Obviously, it was for Arizona high school graduates, which was one of the more thoughtful ways to figure something out in order not to compete with the ballot voter protective clause in Prop 206, Prop 300. But the opportunity is there, and it's just a matter of putting all the right people in place in order to pass something substantive that's really going to give people an opportunity to get that education and be those contributors to society that they want to be.
Luis,
Well said.
Luis, you kind of had to hack the system. You had to go out of state to a private higher education to pursue higher education. And look, we're happy you did it, but gosh, we would have loved to have had you stay at ASU, and thank goodness you came back. Reyna, you probably have a lot of people you encounter who they're not able to continue their education.
Yes, and the majority either do not continue their education, they go into the workforce, or a lot of them leave our state, unfortunately. As you mentioned, I'm really grateful that you mentioned that it's like, yes, Luis came back, but the reality is that less than 40% will return back after they have leave community college or university. Those are your most transformative years. That's when you start building your networks. Right. That's when you start thinking about what career you're gonna go. So the likelihood of you returning to the state that you went in your K-12 education, it is not really likely. So unfortunately, there's 2,000 undocumented students or DACA recipients that graduate from our Arizona high schools every single year. 2,000 every school year. Every May, we're graduating 2,000. And what are we doing with them? Many of them are leaving our states, and many of them are finding a way to take one class, 2 classes, like Luis was thinking about those different options. But instead of like expediting their opportunity to get a bachelor's or to get into a technical degree, we're actually elongating the time that they can even contribute in a very different way, not only monetarily, but also in their skill set. One of my all-stars students from Aliento, right now he's at MIT. He wanted to go to ASU, but he's at MIT. He's gonna be a sophomore now. Then I have another student, Saul, who is at LMU in LA. I have another, and I can continue on, and I have a big list, And it's so unfortunate. It's like they want to stay here in Arizona. Arizona is their home. They have younger siblings for the most part, and they want to be able to be mentors because these are first generation students for the majority of the time. So they want to pay it forward, and we're like closing the doors on them. It's like we're shooting ourselves in the foot. It's like makes no practical or rational sense.
Well, I always like to say that one of the greatest advantages for the United States of America is that the best and the brightest and the hardest working people on the planet want to come here and make the United States their home. That is a great thing. That's a beautiful thing. We should have a welcome mat out, and for those who want to participate and contribute to the American dream, we should say thank you, and let's all work together. And the work that you've done, Reyna, is just remarkable. And Luis, I just appreciate you on every level. I'm gonna say this because I'm a lot older than the two of you. We're gonna get this done. We're gonna get DACA plus done. It may take a little bit of time, but we're gonna get it done. And I hope to have the privilege and honor to be, if you so choose, both of you to be at the citizenship ceremony, because that's we are about welcoming people into the United States. We're about creating. We want to maximize the God-given abilities of everyone who lives with us. And you both have just. I'm proud to call you Arizona. I'm proud to call you friends, and we're gonna have to work harder. And I just also want to say that if it is a bad decision by the Supreme Court, we've already talked to Garrick. Probably I also use Twitter. Is going to be Congress needs to get into session like yesterday, and at least make sure that there is legal status. Period, where the DACA population is protected at that second in time as we work towards a path to citizenship, not just for the DACA recipients, but for but for all the dreamers and all those who are looking to contribute to the United States.
Thank you, Glenn. I think that is so important to talk about how scary it can be as a DACA recipient. And I get these calls every single day. Talking about Twitter this week, you know, the ICE officer did say in a conversation with Senator Durbin that he would deport us as soon as we would lose our status. So I've been hearing so many people that support us, and they're so well-intentioned and they have our back, but then yet they don't believe that then we're gonna get deported. And I think that's the biggest threat right now, that good people of good conscience that support us are gonna remain silent. Here in the state of Arizona, we were able to conduct a poll just in March from Arizona voters, and across the political lines, we got 87% of them vote, having 98% Democrats to 74% of Republicans and 91% of independents. I'm not a pollster, but I could tell you that these are one of the best numbers I have seen, and I don't think that even Candy has as much of a higher percentage than us, you know? So it makes sense, but at the end of the day, it's gonna be up to Congress, and it is up to us as people who are involved, as good people of conscience, for Arizona voters, US citizens, to pick up the phone, make those calls to your senator, to your representative, and also make those letters and say that you care about dreamers and that you wanna see a solution.
Well,
Yeah, we certainly, we're count both of us in, and you know, with our affiliation with the U.S. Chamber, this is a major issue. And one of the reasons we wanted to do this show is because we know that the Supreme Court case could come any day, and if it does, if it's a decision, we know there's work no matter what. Okay, so there's a ton of work. We need to get good comprehensive immigration reform done, but there may be an emergency situation here, and we wanted to use this show to get people ready. And I've been already, you know, having these conversations with some of my friends at the U.S. Chamber to make sure that we're ready to go. If it is a worst case scenario, we are going to mobilize immediately.
Reyna, thanks for doing this. Luis, love you, buddy. Thanks for doing this. Glad to have you on. Reyna, you're the most popular gal in town. We know that you've got another media hit here in like 10 minutes, so we'll let you go. We hope that, Glenn, how about this? How about after the court rules, we have these two back on and discuss it?
We would be honored if you would return to the show.
Yeah, thank you so much for the invitation, and take care, stay healthy, and blessings to everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Bye.
everybody. We'll see you on the next one.
Thank you.